Each of these individuals is, has a different path through the industry, and they have worn all different hats, whether it's writing, directing, producing, acting, you name it. So let's bring them on stage. Let's begin with, we'll go from stage left to right. Trevor White. Let's hear it. Trevor White. Let's hear it. Who's next? Ross Parker. Digital. And last but certainly not least, Michael Werwig. All right, guys, what are we going to talk about today? Oh, let's get Trevor in the light a little more. Trevor's like in the dark. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna talk about a lot of things this evening. We just got through a writer's block where we were doing live reads for screenwriting, and we talked a lot about how the screenplay is the genesis of the story. But as you guys know, there's the story you write, there's the story you shoot, and there's the story you edit, and then it's a whole different. It keeps going through different transformations as it goes. And so today, I really want to talk about story in general, and that story can be the screenplay, it can be from the actor's perspective, it can be from the producer's perspective, director's perspective. So we're going to kind of, it's going to be a little more freeform. I just want to begin with by kind of introducing you guys and some of your credits, so that everyone knows who they're looking at. Obviously, they can see the giant billboard behind us that has a lot of your credits splashed all over it. And that's not even probably 60% of them. There's more up there that we could have done. Great movies that are still missing from there. But we'll start out with Trevor, who I've known for 17 years?
Yeah.
Don't sound sad about it.
Yeah.
It's been a crappy 17 years since I met you. But Trevor and his brother, Tim, took LA by storm. I'm going to tell a quick, funny story. Trevor and his brother Tim had optioned a script that I had written that was a Nickel Fellowship script, and I remember we were hustling. We were going to Nantucket to try to get this movie. That's when we met you. We're trying to get this movie made, and I remember taking Trevor and Tim into my agent's office at Gersh, and my agent, I don't have the nicest words to say, but he was a little bit like snotty and snide, and he was talking about Tim and Trevor as being these two young guys who don't really know what they're doing because they're new on the scene. And I was thinking in my head, you watch these guys, they're going to crush it. And I had never had any lack of doubt. And now Trevor is producer, director, writer. Some of the movies that he's done with him and his brother are Wind River, LBJ, Villains. Trevor wrote and directed Crooked Somebody. Eternity's coming out, Fair Play, The Coast, King Richard, I'll get to that in a minute. The Threesome, which is in theaters now, Ingrid Goes West, which kind of did fantastic in multiple circuits. Yeah, so let's hear it for Trevor one more time. And then we have Ross, who's, is this your first film festival?
Yeah, it's my first one.
Yeah. No, it's not his first one. He's a festival rat. And Jennifer, are you here as well?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, she's a rat.
She's a super talented wife, an actress extraordinaire. Ross has acted in many different things up there. We see Stranger Things, Baghead, as you can see in his own movie Lamb, which is, if you've never seen it, is a feat of atmosphere, and you should all check it out. And that was adapted from a novel, correct?
Correct.
Right. And so let's hear it for Ross. And then here next to me, we have a fellow, another, the Nickel Fellowship is a screenwriting competition for people who don't know. It's run by the Academy of Motion Pictures. Those of us who have been lucky enough to be granted access to this award and community, one of the greatest things is to get to make friends with a lot of talented filmmakers, and Michael is absolutely one of those. He is behind the movie that if you've ever opened an app called Netflix, you've probably seen this, like, well, if you watch true crime movies like me, and you see this constantly, like, trending #1, trending #2, trending #1. I'm not going to look at it because I can say it. Extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile. And there's no comment. There's no option for comment. Which is about Ted Bundy, and we'll get into that. And then his other Lost Girls, and I think you're also in project now. Are you to direct something now, or are you?
I'm just writing a few things right now.
Writing a few things. There you go. But you were a producer on.
I was a producer on Extremely Wicked, and Lost Girls was my first professional job.
Oh, really? That was the preceding.
Well, I wrote Wicked to win the Nickel Fellowship. That's what kind of launched everything, and that's what got me the job for Lost Girls. Wicked was a 9-year odyssey. Lost Girls was 7 years. There was a lot that went on.
Let's just jump right into that, and we'll go back and up and down the thing. But so, what prompted that interest in that story, Extremely Wicked? We'll call it Wicked.
Yeah, honestly, I never intended to write that movie. I was bartending at the time, and I was trying to write something much more commercial, like some big action movie that just wasn't working. I got bored and started procrastinating, reading a book about Ted Bundy. I didn't know anything about him. I don't even know why I picked it up. And I was so compelled by the domestic side of the story that I thought this could be such a cool con man story. And just became so obsessed with the kind of the non-violent details of his life, and it to me seemed like such an interesting Romeo and Juliet story almost, where there's a court case between the two of them. It was really kind of a fucked up love story.
I don't want to make people cheer, but if you've seen the movie, I remember you and I were at a mixer one time, and I was saying how much I appreciated the fact that, and we were talking to one of the writers in the last block about making your audience complicitous in bad things and going along with things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, like cheering on a criminal or cheering on a murderer or getting revenge. And obviously, there's a lot of mixed emotions in that project. And I remember I was talking to you, I was like, that was awesome. You're like, yeah, a lot of people got mad at me about that. Like, is that, like, because I don't know if that was just something you said off the cuff, but did you get a strange response from people feeling like, kind of like the Dahmer story that just came out, that a lot of people felt that it was kind of taking a sideways look at Dahmer that shouldn't be taken, but you were brave enough to take that look. So what was the response to that?
Like, the response to the movie when it came out, the way it was marketed was a lot different than what the spec script was. The big twist of the spec script was that you didn't know who it was until the very end. And with the movie, it was marketed as a Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie from the start. And that was a choice the financier made. And I think there's pros and cons to it, but I think there was, it kind of played into what the movie's all about, which is this seduction by a person that really pulled the wool over everybody who cared about him's eyes. And it was the same seduction that those people felt that I think the audience was uncomfortable experiencing in real time. And I wouldn't say they were mad, but I think it was they weren't sure how to respond to it in the moment, I would say.
And the last question on this one, but do you like making people uncomfortable in that situation?
I love those kinds of movies personally. I like movies that have a big twist at the end that recontextualizes everything that comes before it. And I think that ultimately was the goal. I didn't think it was gonna do anything for me career-wise. I thought it was just kind of a fun exercise that nobody would ever see, because it's not really the most marketable spec script idea. It was just something I thought it would be a calling card script, honestly, and it was for many, many years. I didn't think it was going to get made, and it was a miracle anything ever gets made, but the stars aligned at a certain point. But yeah, it was just supposed to be something to get my foot in the door and to show people that I could do character and weird tones.
And well done. So I'm just going to throw it back to you, Trevor, because Michael just said, it's a miracle anything ever gets made. And then when I talk to friends, I'm like, yeah, Trevor's got like 5 movies coming out. He just got back from Wick 4. Like, you, and I'm not trying to blow sunshine at you, but you have an amazing track record for your time in the industry so far of actually getting things done on the screen. And so, I'm not saying like tell everyone the secret, because there's no secret, but can you give us a little bit of insight on how you're able, you and Tim, because Tim is a big part of your process?
Yeah, sure. It sure doesn't feel that way from where we're sitting. I should start with that. You know, I think this, getting movies made, it's always a miracle. Every time first day cameras are rolling, it's like this giant sigh of relief that you got there. I do have this feeling, less so with television, where there are so few homes that can actually see, you know, the script into a reality. I do believe, like feature scripts, movies, you can will them to fruition.
I've heard you say that before.
I genuinely believe it. I mean, some of it really comes down to what we feel in our gut is something that talent will want to be a part of. Filmmakers, actors, financiers, and most importantly, audiences. So, you know, I think that criteria has actually shifted a lot for us in the last few years, especially after King Richard. I think there was this mentality in the beginning of like, ooh, do you think this movie can get made? And now it's, oh, do you think there's an audience for this movie, right? Because there's a lot of movies that can get made, but no one's gonna actually watch. And that's fine too, there's a purpose for that. That's their great calling cards or you know, established filmmakers, but I think, you know, we're really interested now in making films that, you know, hopefully can catch on and find an audience. So,
why was King Richard a inflection point for that?
I think it was the most broadly appealing movie we had made, and it just kind of hit, you know, that classic term of all four quadrants. Like, it just was a movie for everyone. And I think that experience was really fulfilling. And look, that's not exclusively what we want to do. We certainly are still excited about doing edgier things or interesting. I mean, Fair Play came after that, and that was a script that no one wanted in town. I mean, we took that thing out for a year, and that was one that I think most people would have been like, well, this isn't going to happen. But we really believed in that writer-director and thought she had an incredible take and vision on it. And it went through 4 different casts before it finally came together, and then it happened, and it kind of blew up at Sundance, and had a really big moment there. So.
Right, such a well-written script. I mean, it's like hard to deny that script.
And now that director, you know, that was her first movie as a writer-director, and now she's just done a new movie for Neon, and she's on every studio list, and, you know, she's a rocket ship right now. So.
There's one thing about that movie, if anyone's ever seen where's the streaming?
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. It's well worth watching. It's kind of funny because it reminds you of 70s intense drama. Let's say they'll call it a thriller. But it has that kind of old school, well-honed, intimate moment, tension, and all the things you would want boiled into like a script. Ross, you come at this a lot of times from the opposite direction, like where Trevor's and Tim are, you know, Star Throwers, their company, are like willing it through like a lot of the channels and studio. You've also come around the backside of the indie world a lot, right? And kind of worked with Duplass and some of the others. So what is that world like, willing things into being?
I think it's, you know, it's equally as gruesome. Yeah, and I think that that's just kind of my background is such that we just are just trying to get things made. And, you know, coming as an actor, it's a little bit different. I've been an actor for a while, and you just try to, you know, at first it was just getting a bunch of your friends together, really, and making something for what is so not minimally a cost of $15,000 or something to make a movie. It's just a lot.
How much was Baghead?
$15,000, if that. I mean, I was hanging, you know, I joke about this all the time. I was acting in a scene, and then I would be climbing a tree and hanging a light, and then hanging my own source light so I could be seen, on the camera. And that's really how it started. So, which gave us a kind of, and kudos to Duplass guys, because they have always been about just going out and making stuff, so. And that, kind of was my education. I made a film back in 98 or something. It was truly my first film. It was a terrible film. It was my film school, quite honestly, and it made me realize that, it actually comes full circle about like adapting books and things like that. Like I wasn't a great writer, and I quickly learned that by watching a film that I made show up at Toronto Film Festival and hearing an audience and being like, shit, I gotta really check what I'm saying and what I want to say, and really think about that a little bit more closely.
Like, just to kind of read between the lines on that, do you mean that, like, the message that we're sending, or the type of writing you were doing?
The type of writing, yeah, some of the messaging in it, and just, by the time you make a movie and by the time it comes out, it's two different things, so you're tonally what you're playing with can change, so I think that that's something that, it's such a long process making a film. But yeah, just being the responsibility of it, I think there's a responsibility of, the storytelling that you're doing and what you want to say. You don't realize it until there's like a huge audience, watching something that you've kind of kicked from your gut and realize, okay, so that's, it's quite an education,
Yeah, when we met, because when we were at Nantucket, I think the first time we were at the Nantucket Film Festival, another great film festival, by the way. Were you there for Baghead? Is that what we were there?
Yeah, 2008, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think all three of us met standing in the line somewhere.
Yeah, that's Nantucket.
Yep.
We're at a bar.
Or like the little gazebo with the mudslides in the middle.
Could have on the ferry, who knows? Yeah.
So I'm going to throw out this question to all you guys, and in any order that you feel like you have your thoughts. But, I'm at a stage right now where I'm about to start a new project, and my mind is kind of like just like an open. We always have those ideas that are in the back of our mind that we may work on, we may not work on. But when you get to an open field, like where you're just like, all right, what do I want to do next? And you start searching, kind of like when you just picked up the book, and you're like, I don't know what I want to do, but something just popped in. Is it more like found objects, like that? Found object art? Or is it more like, I really want to get something across that speaks to this issue, or I just have a character that I want to let go, or is it market demand? Just like, what attracts you to the next project you're going to do? And it might be a little bit different when you're producing, because you might be doing multiple, versus writing where you just got to go in a hole or a trench for weeks and months. But anyone want to pick up how they kind of come up into focus what they want to do next, or what draws them?
Sure, I'll start. I do have come at things from a very different perspective than probably a writer. For me, it's very much instinctual. It's do I read something and just, am I moved by it? Am I drawn into these characters? And then part two of that is what I discussed earlier, which is like, okay, there's a lot of things I like that I don't think is necessarily right for us. So then there's the question of, who is that right for? And what's great about, I think, the film community is like, we know a lot of people, and so oftentimes scripts will come to me from people who have read something and they say, oh, this wasn't right for me or my boss, but this fits the Star Thrower brand, or vice versa. So, I think the most important thing is just time, right? Like, we have a very limited amount of time, and these movies take everything out of us. So we have to be incredibly picky about what we're going to go, I have 2 young kids, and what I'm going to go be away from them for 3 months for, So I have to love something. I have to feel incredibly passionate about it. And then there's the reality of like keeping a business afloat. And is this something that can pay my overhead, right? So there's those questions as well. Not to sound so unromantic about making movies. I came into it because I love movies, but those are all the kind of things. But it starts with like, how much do I love that script?
I mean, it doesn't sound unromantic. It was actually in the last block when we were talking to the writers, and we were talking about like, it's time. it's having a room of one's own. It's being able to kind of process the thoughts and not rush the project. But the last time we Zoomed, Trevor, like I think we even tapped into this. Like how do you balance having the two kids, the house, the dog, your wife's own kind of career and passions and yours, and still being able to be a human being? It's a lot.
Xanax.
I mean,
honestly, you just
all
do
three of you
it.
have young kids.
Yeah. You just do it. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like not thinking about it, and you just go and do it. I mean, for me, I've been fortunate that the last 2 years I've had films go to really fun cities, and I actually bring my whole family up, and we do like
The shoot.
to the shoot. And so, you know, a month or 6 weeks of prep is usually me going back and forth every weekend, and then it's like camp in that location with the whole family.
And the last one was
We just made a movie in Massachusetts, yeah, called Tony on Cape Cod, which is it's like it's about a young Anthony Bourdain. So it's not a biopic, but it is one summer in the life of 20-year-old Anthony Bourdain. The first summer he moved to Provincetown and worked in a restaurant, and it's kind of his coming of age story. And we're doing it with A24.
And when is that slated to release?
It'll be next fall, I imagine. We're still, we just wrapped this summer, so
It's gonna be awesome.
it's gonna be good. Yeah, I just saw the first cut. It's really special.
Love that. This is genuine excitement, actually. Ross, you're about to jump in with something.
I can't remember what.
We were talking about like balance. And,
Oh, yeah. I mean, luckily my wife is an actor too, so if I go away or if I'm writing something, she kind of gets the whole process. My daughter, at 5, doesn't quite get it yet, but we're working on it.
She was cheering you on, though.
She was, but she's already left, so she's bored, and that's usually the case. So, you just try to. I'm going back to your original question about what finds you, or sometimes you find the material. The novel that the Lamb movie that I made, I was just at a point where I was so frustrated with kind of acting work and the business itself, and was perusing Skylight books and came across this book and started reading it in the aisle, and it was like an hour later I'm still reading it, and I finally took it home and I read it that night, and there was something about it that really just grabbed me, and I called Jen, my wife, and I was like, I have to make this movie, and that was how it started.
That's like Trevor's gut check, in a sense.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, what do you think? I think this is an emotional thing, coming at it from. I don't have a business such as Trevor, so it's not as. I'm always looking for something that kind of hits me in the gut.
I agree. I think it's something you have to love. These things take so long. I mean, for me, writing a feature script, a quick script for me is like 1 year minimum, more like 2+. And you have to wake up every day and enjoy the process. Extremely Wicked was more the exception to my process. I'm usually not that quick as far as deciding on something. A lot of the things that I work on are ideas that I've had for maybe a decade or more. The last thing I just sold was an idea I had 10 years ago, and I just kind of like filed it in the back of my mind. And the test for me is, do I keep thinking about it, even when I kind of forget it for a few months or a year or two to work on something else? Does it keep coming up when I'm looking for something to fill my time with? And if the answer is yes, then I just keep taking it more seriously until I have space to bring something new into my life. As far as the balance, I mean, I'm learning that right now. My daughter's turning 3 months this week, and she's my first, and it makes me wonder like what I did with all my time before she was here. But I think when you have those constraints, I'm finding it's almost like it's useful for productivity when I know that like I only have the 3 hours in the morning to get to put the time in and get the work done, and then I got to be a dad, and I think that's been really helpful so far. But really, yeah, it's an emotional feeling, and it's what do I want to spend my time on when I'm out with my family.
It's funny you say that about the time. It was one of the writers in the last block. You might be here, Michael. You here?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, which mic? Yeah, oh yeah. So we were talking about like, cause it's Michael Moore over here. We were talking about like time and having space and doing that, and I'm like you, like sometimes it's the compression, cause I own a business as well, and it's a huge part of my life, and my son's over there, and I was, having him, and I was, he's in the middle there. He's not little anymore. But it's almost like when you're compressed and you have like a limited amount of time, it makes you get to work. There's no more like cleaning the house as like procrastination. So I think.
Well, I find it's different like when I'm on an actual job. Like if I have a contract that says you have 12 weeks to deliver a script, that makes me sweat thinking about it, but you get it done somehow.
Start writing with a contract.
Absolutely. I start writing before I even have a job sometimes. But if I'm writing a spec just in my own time, I just whittle away in private about it. I don't even tell my reps sometimes that I'm working on things because I don't like the pressure of people waiting on it. And I think the more time you can get as far as days, like the number of nights you can sleep on it, I think it always pays dividends the more you have. And I like to have as many as possible.
Trevor, when you are, one thing you said before I want to go back to before I forget, you said that like the Hollywood community is small and sometimes like people will like refer projects. Do you find yourself doing that a lot where you're kind of like saying like, hey, you guys might be good for this, or is that just like a?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of just, you'll be at lunch or on the phone and just say, hey, have you read this? Like it's a script that's going around. I mean, the thing that's really, how many people here are writers or want to be writers? Yes, everyone, okay. I mean, I should first say, like, I've been answering this from the perspective of me today as a producer, but I do firmly believe that writers, especially when they're starting out, should write the stuff. Like, do not think for a second about what's going to sell, what's going to get made, what is town looking for. The way to establish a voice is to write the thing that is, like, going to be the best thing you can write. And as a producer, I'm always reading things that aren't for me, but I'm like, that writer I want to sit with immediately and develop something with. I want to go brainstorm ideas and come up with something else, right? Like, so the movie Eternity, for example, I'll give a quick anecdote on this. We were in the process of making the movie LBJ, right? And that was, we were lucky to get to go to the White House on a visit scouting for LBJ, like Rob Reiner and Woody Harrelson, and so we were doing a little tour of the West Wing, and this young staff writer for Obama, it was their last year, so he knew he was done at the White House in 5 months, and he approached us and said, hey, my name's Pat Canan, I've been here at the White House for 6.5 years, and I'm moving to LA to be a writer when I'm done. And, it's like a kind of a bold, he was very nervous to like come and say that. And Tim and I stayed in touch with him, and he wrote this little spec that we liked, and not for us, but I was like, this is a great voice. And then we started developing other things, and we had done this other script, and then Eternity was one of those things where he was like, I have a one-sentence idea. I don't know what it is beyond this, but it's a woman shows up in the afterlife and has to choose between her first husband, who died 60 years ago in the war, and her second husband, who she built an entire life with. Who does she want to spend her afterlife with? And I was just like, instantly, holy shit, that's an insanely amazing, dramatic question for a movie. And then we spent a year just developing it, just like throwing every idea at the kitchen sink before he went to script, So I say that to say, like, this all stemmed from the fact that he wrote things that weren't for us, but we saw the voice in it and we're like, that's awesome. So that's a long-winded way to say that. I don't even think I answered your question.
No, you did, and a couple others. If anyone hasn't, or if anyone has, or you should, check out the trailer for Eternity. It looks amazing. When does that come out?
Thanksgiving this year.
It looks amazing. And I actually have people, I was actually online, I heard some people talking, I didn't text you, but just two random people like, have you seen the trailer for Eternity?
There's a new trailer dropping on Tuesday.
You heard
We
it
just
first.
premiered when we premiered it at DIFF. It's a really special. I love this movie so much, maybe in part because of how we put it together from like one sentence to now a fully formed movie that is going to be a wide release with A24. So, you know, I might be biased, but I think it's a really great kind of addition to the rom-com canon.
That's the best part of producing, that kind of stuff.
Totally agree. It's really satisfying.
There's a lot of it's not. That's
Jump,
off TV.
jump into that, Ross. Like,
No, it's just such, you know, producing a movie is, I don't think, there's not much that is harder than that. You know, I mean, certainly operating on, human beings, firefighters, you know, but it's, you're dealing, you know, firefighter, at least your fire is pretty consistent, you know what it is. Human beings on that scale with so many people is really a difficult task, and it's not only just the, getting the movie, like you were talking about earlier, getting the movie, you know, first day of photography, but that's barely the beginning of your process, and it goes on for a couple of years, and even after that, when you're still dealing with accounting, and it's a long road as a producer, so.
Well, that's the independent route. When you get,
Yeah.
when I mean, I
True.
still get the guilds chasing me on Ingrid Goes West from 2016. You know.
Yeah.
Sorry, that wasn't true.
You and Jared?
but Ross, how do you get animals to act?
My wife throw that one at you?
No,
You know about that one.
So I was watching Lamb, and I'm like, are these CGI? What the hell's going on here?
What, I don't even remember the animals in Lamb.
There's not a lamb?
That's a joke. No, there's no lamb in Lamb.
As
But
far
there was the latest movie I did was called Birthright, and we had a dog that we needed to, and this is, you know, just kind of practical stuff, but when we were making Birthright, we needed this dog sequence, and it was kind of an integral part of the movie, but like there was numerous scenes, and again, being kind of just ambitious, I guess it's almost a dirty word sometimes. We just went into it thinking I didn't have the time, I didn't have the money. We were just like, all right, well, I'll figure it out. We had my wife's family dog, and then our producer had this little dog, and we needed this dog for about 5 scenes. But it had to kind of have this pivotal moment in the story where it was in the woods, and it was just not responding to its owner, and it was barking, and it was really weird. And you know, you usually have a dog wrangler, but again, independent film, right? You're like, I just gotta figure this out. So for the first, you know, couple scenes of the movie, we ended up just auditioning both dogs because we didn't know which one was gonna respond or do anything. And the little dog looked really kind of creepy and weird, so I was like, you know, at least I can make that kind of weird because it's just a weird dog and he's small and he shook a lot, so I'm like, that's kind of a scary thing. And then the other dog was this cute little dopey dog. He's like a, you know,
Golden Retriever.
Golden Retriever, right, thanks. And so we just put both of them in until we had to come to the climatic scene where we had to actually do something. And basically, I just got down like on my knees and was in the woods and placed the dog, and I just started going and just seeing what it did. And he just responded, and it was, you know, it's one of the better scenes in the movie now. And everyone was always asking me, how the hell did you get the dog to do that? And it was dumb luck.
Birthright is doing the festival circuit as we speak, right?
It was just released. It's on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's out now. Yeah.
What's just the basic premise of that?
It's about 2 women who are trying to conceive a child and move into this house. It's a thriller genre horror movie, and unbeknownst to them, there's a kind of a bloodline that's been kind of spoiled, and they have digs on their newborn baby, little Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah,
kind of thing, yeah.
Speaking of, because what you just crossed over, you started talking about horror, and you know, when you're talking about thrillers here with you and rom-coms, Eternity sounds probably even more elevated than a rom-com. It's whatever I don't know what term you use. It just kind of brings us into like genre. Got it.
Rom-drom.
Rom-com. I heard it here first. So the idea of genres were like when I was growing up, something was like a drama, and then dramedy came. Now everything is kind of like a potpourri of things, but we still have our sensibilities of the worlds that we like to work in. Trevor, you seem to, you like your sports movies, you like your thrillers, you got a little bit of everything. Politics, Tim's very political. Is it you, or do you like those? You've done the thriller route, or pigeonholed, like, so genres. Genres and tone are very interesting these days, at least when I watch films, because I'm like, wow, this is an amazing tonal balance this person's pulling off. Like even like Weapons recently, to be like laughing and scared at the same time. There's just these things. So what are you doing with genres and tones? Like, we'll start out with you, because are you sticking in a more traditional thriller, or are you kind of expanding into new lanes?
I think there's two ways to answer that. I think there's the kind of like self-branding version of like how my reps want to sell me as a particular writer. I was clear with them several years ago, like two movies I got made are true crime movies. I never approach them like true crime stories. I don't really approach anything like a genre movie. It's really who's the character and what's the story we're telling. But I got sent kind of every true crime podcast and article that you can imagine, and it's just, that's not what's interesting to me. It's usually, what's the situation, what's the character, what's at stake? And I think as long as that's the North Star, oftentimes a story will suggest the genre that it wants to be in. And I think that's really helpful because you can explore those genres and play in or subvert the tropes of those genres. But I've never found much love personally intentionally trying to write a particular genre of a story if it doesn't come organically first from either theme or character or something more human. That said, if you can fit it into a genre or something that feels like a type of movie that people are familiar with, I think it is helpful when the script goes out into the world for people to understand from the business side how to sell it.
Even if the trailer can trick people into the audience and make them.
Well, I mean, there's certain things you just don't have control over those kinds of things. But in the script stage, it's really what is the core story, and if you're playing into a genre, are you paying off our expectations of that genre? I think in a way that we want but don't understand, or ways that we don't expect. I think this, like for example, Lost Girls and Extremely Wicked are both serial killer movies with no serial killing. And I thought that was an interesting subversion of that genre. That wasn't why I wrote the stories, but that was what kind of intrigued me about the way to tell the story. That wasn't otherwise just a straightforward drama.
Yeah, I like the way you described it, like stories suggest a genre, but I will decide whether to lean in or lean out of it, and subvert it, as you said. So that's really interesting. Trevor, because you play with, you have lots of different paint barrels you're going into. You probably just kind of go with your gut as well, but is there anything like guiding force that you kind of lean into, like, and I'm just talking about personally, like you said you don't really love horror, that's not your thing, but like you would do a horror if it struck you, but like where do you land?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would do anything. There are just some genres that probably are more of a bullseye than others. Like sci-fi, horror are two that it's got to just feel really different and elevated and unique. We made this movie a couple years ago called No One Will Save You. And I don't know if you guys know Brian Duffield, who's a writer, director, but Brian just has this like insanely unique voice. And I remember getting that script, and it was 45 pages. There wasn't one word of dialogue in the whole thing. There's actually this great, it's online. You guys should Google this, just look up like No One Will Save You famous page. And it's like, he really plays with form and trying to, in a way that doesn't feel like put on or pretentious. It feels very organic to the storytelling. And I just remember coming out of that script going, like, no one's gonna make this movie. But it's awesome. Like, it's totally awesome. So
Very fun if you haven't seen it.
yeah, literally no dialogue in the whole movie, and it's kind of like an update on Body Snatchers. But it's really that excites me, kind of doing things that feel like pushing a genre in a new place. It's also terrifying. I will say, it's the only time I've been on a set and been like, ooh, this could be really bad. Like, it's just our actress against green screen with green people. Like, I was like, this is the least scary thing I've ever seen.
I'd love to have seen your face on that day.
I was worried. But no, I mean, I always trusted Brian. I thought he was such a genius. So, yeah, you know, again, like, I want everything. I want to kind of diversify the whole portfolio in a way, but like, it comes down to character. It comes down to like, do I want to spend time with these people?
So it pretty much comes down to character for all you guys, Ross.
Yeah, and if it's intentional, right? If it's something, you know, if you read something and it's trying to be all those things just to try to be all those things, it's never gonna land anyway. But there are, like you were saying, those type of movies that, I don't know, I don't think it's really, I think it's always been that there's always these movies that are out there that are breaking genre all the time. I mean, you look at history, there's so many different types of movies, Clockwork Orange, like all these movies that like spoke for themselves in their own way. Rubber, you see Rubber, that movie?
The tire.
The tire movie. I love that movie. I mean, it's literally about a tire that falls off a car and it becomes a serial killer. Quentin, yeah. So I think they're always out there. I think it's being more talked about now with like the Substance came out and all of a sudden everyone's like blew their mind about, you know, crossing genres.
An 80s movie that
Yeah.
was repackaged.
Yeah, exactly. But it had Demi Moore in it. It became popular, and now everyone's talking like, you know, we want that kind of thing. And so it goes in phases, right? I think I think people are always just hungry for original, like Trevor was saying, just something original and feels intentional.
So off that, how do you not, this goes to everyone, how do you not lose your North Star? Because I think a lot of people, once, you know, as a writer, you come into it, when you win the nickel, for example, you're like, I wrote this very personal story, or I wrote this thing that took a long time, and then the next thing someone asks you to do, you're like, oh, I'll try to do that, or I'll try to do that, I'll try to be that. And sometimes, for all the writers, because there are a lot of hands that went up, a lot of times we feel like, am I writing the right thing? Am I chasing the right dragon here? And sometimes you have to kind of write a bad script to get back to a good script, or you kind of got to go down some blind alleys before you come back. So keeping that North Star, it seems like some filmmakers just have the North Star and they never wobble off it. And some great filmmakers, you know, like David O. Russell, wobble and then they come back on point again. So how do you guys try to keep your North Star, or are there any tricks that you try to do, or is it just like, you know, it's a weird question, I know.
I think when you're writing something original like spec scripts, it can be helpful to kind of stray from the path of your own star and even get lost. I think that's it's the unfortunate part of the process, which is what makes it so long. A lot of times you'll learn a lot of things, but you only learn them by taking that detour that's actually the wrong route. And I'm kind of going through that right now, and it's a hard lesson to relearn on each project. But otherwise, I've heard of writers like taping the log line or the theme over their monitors. I've never really done that, but I think just kind of anytime you get lost or feeling like it's not working, stepping back and asking, what was it that attracted me to this in the first place? Or what I love about it? You know, what excites me? You know, whether it's a small thing or a big thing, zoom in and zoom out, and just kind of trick your brain into analyzing the story, and suddenly you're back in it. But it's tricky, and I continually make that mistake myself. I mean, I wrote some projects I probably never should have even done, but you have to do that to get them out of your system, I guess, or to learn. I've learned lessons from everything, but really it's just a matter of at-bats, just kind of going up, doing it again and again.
Yeah, it was actually your brother Tim. I remember we were sitting one time and he was talking about scripts, and he goes, certain scripts have the X factor, and he was like, he was trying to like articulate what it was. And in my mind, I was thinking, kind of like what you're saying, is I bet you that writer took a lot of like detours wrong out, and then found kind of almost like an adjacent depth that would have never came if they just did a straight line, and that almost kind of breathes out to be an X factor in it, if that makes sense.
think those X factors are often the result of like mistakes, or you don't even realize it's an X factor until someone has read it and commented on it, and then it allows you to see it differently. You can kind of play into it. I also think it's kind of the product of voice, where it's just the sum of like millions of decisions that you make throughout the writing and construction of a movie that create what your voice is in that project.
I was listening to the writers of Palm Springs. They go, we just got in a room and we just made a lot of decisions. That's all they said. But Ross, what about you with North Star?
I think I'm not really. I don't really have one. I think I'm just trying to.
That helps.
Yeah, I think you know, there's nothing specific that I'm. Again, we go back to the earlier question of what I like, and it's usually something that hits me and it impacts me in a way. Or when I'm trying to create a story, you know, I don't want to fall into. It's like as being an actor, I don't want to be, you know, just in one area or one genre or what. I'm always trying to explore in different areas and trying to challenge myself in other ways. I'm writing something now that's I've written something now that's much more like a romantic comedy. In that world, it's still much more independent and obscure, but it still is trying to check off some different boxes that I haven't played in before, and that to me is what is appealing. Maybe that's my North Star, being just all over the place. Who knows?
Well, you're just trying to check new boxes.
Yeah. Trying to just challenge myself in different ways. And look, I'm not making movies for studios, so it's a different thing. I'm usually producing the movies that I've made up until this point, except for this last one that I was hired to write. But
Perfect.
and then it's a graphic novel that I just adapted. So yes.
Well, I want to talk about adaptations really quick after this, but.
Yeah, for me, it's how do I say this? It's more just, I just really want to believe that these movies can be great. I don't want to make something that I think won't be. And so it's not to say that we'll always be successful at that, but I have to believe going into something, this movie, no matter the genre, will be one of the best kind of offerings in the space, right? So like, that's our goal, that's the North Star. That comes down to who's directing, what the script is, who's acting in it, who's shooting it, whose production's on it. It's all of it.
The perfect
So,
package.
Yeah, it's just want to be operating at a level where the quality of the film will be. I mean, you know, I just finished a film from a first-time director, which, you know, we don't do often, and it's like we took nothing. I mean, the budget was not, like, very small, and it was a huge swing. We shot the majority of the movie in Jordan.
What movie?
It's called Atonement. And it's first-time director, but he had been nominated for an Oscar, and I'd seen his Oscar-nominated short, and I was just kind of blown away by it. And in the script, I read his first feature, and I think it's like maybe the only time I've fully teared up reading a script. It just was like very moved by it, and I thought this is an impossible movie to get made, and that's saying a lot for someone who believes anything can get made. And it took us 3.5, almost 4 years to get off the ground. We shot it this summer with Kenneth Branagh and Boyd Holbrook and Yam Abbas, and it's like a really beautiful story set in Iraq, true story during the insurgency out there, and it's a hard movie. And but it, you know, to me, we didn't have the means to hire the best of the best of the best, but I think every decision we made was like, how is this movie going to be insanely special? So that's the North Star.
That's an awesome North Star. I have so many more questions I could ask you guys, but I do want to give the audience a chance to ask any questions they might have, in case anybody is sitting on a question that they have a curiosity about. Does anyone have a question they want to throw out? Mike?
Yeah, I had a question for Michael, from another Michael. As a writer, you mentioned sort of twists that can reframe the entire movie. And that's something I resonate with, I think is very powerful, done in shorts or in features. So my question is, do you have a way to balance how cryptic you are leading up to the twist, how clear you want to be versus how ambiguous along that before the twist?
I think you can have a plan going into it, but really it's kind of trial and error as you go through the different drafts. You know, I wrote, one of my movies was an unsolved case at the time that I wrote it, and there was like 3 or 4 or 5 ongoing mysteries, and the challenge with that was like, how much of each do you reveal, when do you reveal it, how long do you go in between revealing things about this particular thread? I mean, it was maddening, but the only way to get through it is just do it wrong every time until you find the right way to do it. And I think the really helpful way to do that is having some trusted readers and, you know, choosing different people to read various drafts. And if I go back to like the same reader for a subsequent read, I'll skip them on certain drafts so that they're not burned out or have done more work on it. But it's a tricky thing because it has to work as a movie and a story the first time through one way, right? And then knowing the secret has to completely be a different experience, and you as the writer, the challenge is always looking, whether it's a twist movie or not, the challenge as a writer is always, how do you read it and for the 100th time as an audience member, pretending like you know nothing. And I wish I could give you the secret sauce. I don't know myself, but it's just trial and error.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else?
This is kind of for you guys who write and produce your work. Question is, how long do you wait after you've done the first film or your current film? Do you wait for it to have success before you move on to another one, or are you inspired and then you write it and then you're producing it?
No, that's not for me. That question's not, I shouldn't answer that one. Define success.
It's always on to the next thing, right? Always.
I mean, what do you guys think?
I think always on to the next thing. I think the sweet spot is before the current thing goes out into the world. Because you have really no control of what happens at that point, and really to keep yourself sane, always be generating something like creatively fulfilling, ideally. I think that's really the best way to pass the time, is to just habitually do it.
You know, a friend of mine and I have this conversation all the time, and we talk about filmmakers who come out with big splashy first movies that are huge hits, whether they're at Sundance or another festival. And there's a lot of filmmakers who aren't ready for that to happen, which I think is really good advice, is that, you know, if you make your movie and you get it out there and all of a sudden it is a success, there's going to be people wanting to make your next movie, and you should be prepared for that. So you should always be kind of like, you know, a script ahead and having your next thing really in line to be talked about when it happens.
That's really good advice. That's excellent advice.
And one of the things, like as a writer, you go into what are called generals, where you just go in, and I'm sure you do a lot of them, Trevor, where you just go in on the other side of the desk, where you go in and you just are meeting the producers or the development executive because they like your writing, and you think that you're secretly hoping that you get in there and you have this project and that they're going to snap it up, but they're almost always like, okay, I really like that. What do you got next, right? It's always about what's next. So you got to have a couple of things in your back pocket, and I love what you said about that habitual aspect, because it is something where we write because we love to write. We write because we love stories, and if we just are waiting for that success bomb to go off, then what are we doing? You know. But I think someone else had something else to add, or no? All right, other question? Yeah.
I had two questions. The first one actually spurred up from what y'all were just talking about. So if you were to write a movie, it gets released, there's success with it, and then you start having executives or people at studios that are like, we love this movie, let's get a sequel. This one, you know, made a good amount of money, it was very successful, good reviews. When can we get a sequel? And at that point, when do you decide, like, whether or not in your gut that's a good decision artistically to continue that story, or when do you decide to kind of put your foot down a little bit and say, I think that the one movie by itself was good as it is, and I think doing sequel might actually take away from what the first movie was?
I can jump in. I mean, I've only had one film where we've really talked about a sequel, and the original writer wrote a treatment, and we didn't really know what it would look like, and the treatment was fantastic, and then that was like, okay, that's worth doing. So I think the answer is the story good enough? Is there enough to continue with these characters for a sequel, because, just doing it for the money grab doesn't sound very exciting. I mean, everyone will make decisions how they want to make decisions, but from my perspective, it's like, is there enough story to tell, and is it interesting?
Well, I guess like as
I should say my sequel didn't happen, got shut down.
as early filmmakers, maybe like if you're more established, it might be easier to kind of make that decision, but I feel like if you were an early filmmaker and you kind of had that overnight success early with your first or second project, and kind of that scary factor on like in your gut, you don't feel like there's really more of the story to tell, and it kind of becomes maybe diluted, or like you're really kind of trying to push to find it, but then you also kind of don't want to say no to the opportunity, and just kind of finding that balance a little bit as a filmmaker that maybe doesn't have a lot of credits to their name, or you're kind of like really just in your first couple of years of being in the industry.
I think you have to feel it out in the moment. I mean, these are very high-class problems, I think you feel it out and you see what it is at that time. I mean, maybe you just feel fully done with it by the time you wrap and you make it known, like, I don't want to entertain something else. But yeah, it's a hard question to answer in a broad sense, because I think it really is specific to that project.
And also, I think that the fork in the road that you're talking about just doesn't apply to sequels. For writers, it applies, do I want to go on a project? Like, I've been on projects where I just hated being on the project. And I'm supposedly doing something I love, and I'm like, why am I even on this project? So it's not that it was a sequel or anything, but sometimes as a writer, sometimes you make choices of like, am I going to invest my time in this, or should I do it? I'm sure you've had plenty of those decisions.
There's really nothing worse in a creative life than to have to wake up and work on something that you don't love. I mean, I don't have I wish I was able to be more mercenary about it, because there certainly are opportunities to do that. But it really is just, I mean, the subtext of the question sounds like, in your gut, you don't have that driving passion to do it. And if you control it, well, then you hold the cards. If it's the studio that owns it, they're going to make it with or without you. So it kind of depends on what the situation
Exactly,
is.
yeah.
Everybody,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
We are going to have time for one last question. What do you guys think? Ross?
Right there.
Yeah.
First of all, I loved Baghead. Big fan. Everyone's seen Baghead. Amazing. Super funny. Mark Duplass has a great shtick where he talks about the cavalry not coming. So he goes, I go to Sundance and I win Best Director or whatever he won. And I come back to LA and I'm waiting for the phone to ring, and the phone doesn't ring. I'm in this fucking Sundance and I just won Best Director. And who's hitting me up for my next film? And so I guess my question is like, for your guys' opinion, is the entertainment industry sort of just like a mirage? And as a filmmaker, should you always kind of have your producer hat or your entrepreneur hat on and be like, fuck it, I have to go carry the mantle and do the next thing? Or is there something there? Should I be on the phone with CAA every morning?
That's a big question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to be on the phone with CAA every morning. I think it's case specific, and some people have opportunities that are, brought to them after success of, say, being at Sundance. And even with Mark, I think it was more about his years of doing films on his own, and then he actually worked in the studio system for a couple movies, and it made him quickly want to go back to just making his own and having his freedom, because he couldn't take the studio, what you have to endure with that. So the idea that the cavalry is not coming is true, in meaning that you have to be constantly prepared for, you're generating your own, the agents aren't really going to do it for you. You have to be the one who's, you have to be self-reliant and pushing yourself forward. If you're waiting for other people to do it, you'd be constantly disappointed, I think.
I think if the cavalry doesn't come, then yeah, you gotta be entrepreneurial. Like, I think if you want to kind of, you gotta keep generating. You know, my first movie was crickets afterwards. I thought it was gonna change my life and nothing came of it. And then my brother and I started self-generating material. And that's what really kickstarted it. But the flip side is if you write a script and it blows up and it could change your life, and then every opportunity on the planet is all of a sudden in your lap. And then it's, you know, an embarrassment of riches, and you now have to choose which of these is what's best for where I want to go. So, I mean, look, I think again, it really depends on the outcome and what the result is. But I would definitely say if the cavalry doesn't come, like, don't stop. You know.
I would say don't even believe in a cavalry.
Yeah.
Like, just pretend they don't exist. I remember when I first got into the Writers Guild, I was sitting in a, it was like one of those meetings where they bring everyone in and they kind of like indoctrinate you. And there was this woman next to me, raised her hand. She kept saying like, well, how are you going to protect me this? How are you going to, and I was like, these people think like everything, the structure around them is going to be what elevates them or is going to help them. And I think we all know, and probably all you guys out there intuitively understand that it's a hard business, and if you have a cavalry, you're one of the blessed few, because most everyone has to kind of like be their own cavalry. On that note, I want to just kind of take the turn and sort of close it down because we got to clear the theater. But a lot of times in Hollywood, you will hear that people say this again and again: it's who you work with, right? And I just want to say these three gentlemen are salts of the earth, great human beings, even from being here on their super busy schedules. They have young children at home, and if you're ever lucky enough to work with any three of them, you will be super thankful. So let's have one more round of applause.